It's getting nerdy with Mel and Gertie. Get ready for fun, get ready for learning. Inspire your students in an interactive way. Life science, biology, they'll love it more each day. It's time to inspire, it's time to get nerdy. It's getting nerdy with Mel and Gertie.
Hi everyone, welcome to our session today, Navigating Dissection in 2020. We know the future seems uncertain as you return to school in whatever capacity that entails. You may be wondering how you'll be able to engage your students in authentic dissection activities that will not only provide hands-on experiences, but also meet the needs of our ever-changing teaching climate. Our session is only 30 minutes and we have tons of information to share with you, so we're going to go ahead and get started. Just a little bit about us before we dive in. I'm Mel. I'm a mom of two sassy girls, a Jane of all trades, and artists. I'm not an artist, I'm just one artist. And right now, I wish I was still breathing into that paper bag you see here.
And I'm Gretchen. I also do business as Gertie. And like some of you, I managed to hide from my family to make this video. I'm a lover of all things music, hater of all things beans. And while I graduated with a degree in wildlife biology, I'm also scared of all things wildlife. We are two former middle school science teachers with a love of science, lesson design, and collaboration. We've been teaching for a combined 18 years, and when the opportunity arose for us to write curriculum professionally full-time, we dove right in 8 years ago, and we never looked back. We're very excited and grateful to be a part of the Science Squad and Champions for Science, and that we get to share our dissection best practices with you, so thank you for joining us. There's a lot of controversy that surrounds dissection in the classroom. Many educators opt away from dissection because it may seem like an elective or bonus activity, or it's dismissed as archaic, chaotic, or an unnecessary cause of cruelty to animals. We're not gonna lie, there are some truths that exist within those assumptions. It is chaotic, it is messy, unfortunately, and there are companies out there that practice unethical methods of specimen collection. However, dissection of an organism is the only true method of direct observation, measurement, and manipulation of the structures, organs, bones, ligaments, and tendons that allow an organism's body to function. It is a necessary and fundamental part of the training of physicians and other care providers. Without the knowledge developed from exploring specimen, doctors would not be able to treat disease or trauma. Veterinarians would not be able to take care of our furry, feathered, and scaly friends. Dissection is essential to training and understanding. Now, that being said, we believe in the ethical practice of dissection and the need to explore organisms in order to complete the whole picture, giving us insight to an organism's lifestyle and overall behavior. In this session, we will provide you with some ways to easily, sustainably, and successfully incorporate dissection into your 2020 classroom, however that implementation may occur.
But wait, there's more. Before we get into the meat of our session, we also want to take a moment to mention your dissection toolkit. Here you'll find tons of resources such as the note-taking page for this session, one of our early paper dissection models, our lab safety contract, our student dissection lab report, and a few more things. If you haven't already accessed this area of the site, please make sure you grab these freebies before you go today. Your downloads will be available until September of this year. While our session is short, it's jam-packed with ideas to implement dissection in traditional and non-traditional environments. You'll notice on each of our slides that they are divided into classroom and at-home instruction. For lessons that work in both environments, we've combined those sides into a central idea. We'll also be doing a 30-minute live Q&A immediately after this session. So be sure to jot down any questions you have during our session, and we'll answer those during our post-presentation chat. So let's get this thing started. It's always a good idea to start the year off right by setting lab safety expectations early on with a lab safety contract. The lab safety contract ensures accountability on the part of not only the individual student, but also the entire class. Everyone knows what happens when someone doesn't do the right thing, and it helps to have all eyes on the prize if you catch our drift. Most kids enjoy dissection and look forward to it from day one of a life science or biology class, and are extremely heartbroken when they can't participate because they didn't follow the rules and lost their chance to dissect. If you're in the classroom, go over lab safety rules and first aid protocol on the contract within the first week or two of school in tandem with your other classroom rules. Then have your students sign the contract and take it home to have their parents sign it as well. When you make parents partners in your classroom and laboratory expectations, you help to clear up any concerns or misconceptions about what happens when behavior gets out of hand, and you avoid those uncomfortable conversations about why Jack or Jill can't participate in tomorrow's lab. If you're starting the year off virtually, you can do your lab safety contract by way of a Google form. Create the form using your Gmail account. You can edit the text to whatever title you prefer and add your rules below in the description part. You can also swipe the copy from the contract that we provide for you in your toolkit if you'd like. You'll see the option to add various types of questions on the form. Choose the long answer option and then have students retype the safety pledge. This ensures that they are reading what they have to type and they understand the rules and expectations and the consequences. Be sure to have students insert their name where it says I blank to ensure students are held accountable and that you capture their name as well. There are lots of settings in Google Forms, including the options to add cool headers like you see here. You can add in, you can change the color theme, you can create quizzes, you can collect email addresses. We recommend this option at the start of the year to begin collecting those addies for your school records. And while the lab safety contract doesn't seem very useful in virtual environments, it will ultimately serve as the guideline for when students are actually in the lab and participating in hands-on activities. So we still find it valuable.
Yeah. So next, let's go ahead and talk about anatomical directions. Knowledge of the anatomical directions related to organism structure is a critical piece in discussing and performing successful dissections. It reduces confusion when talking about appendages and other structures in relation to other parts of the organism. We love this activity because it can be modified to fit in any environment, both traditional and non-traditional. So you'll see we've combined them on this particular slide. So for this lesson, simply have students take a picture of themselves, a family member, a friend, a pet, or their neighbor, or even just find some clip art online, any other image on the internet too, list goes on. And depending on the level of understanding and where you are in your instruction, you can provide students with a word bank of the terms that you would like for them to know. You can include definitions or even have them define the terms on their own, or challenge students to look up the anatomical directions and define them on their own. As an extension of the lesson, you can have students create analogies and maybe even questions with the terms, such as distal is to far as blank is to near, or the organism's blank is anterior to its blank. You can also ask more thought-provoking questions like, if you cut your organism in equal left and right sides, what type of cut would you have just made? We've provided some sample questions in our quiz and question bank for you in your toolkit, so you can swipe from that activity as well.
Awesome. So in addition to knowing how to identify various areas of an organism, students also need to know how to describe what they're looking at. Scientific observation is one of the most important aspects of completing dissection, being able to identify one appendage with relation to another, as well as describing an organism's appearance, its structure, behavior, lifestyle, and more. An easy way to accomplish this is to have students go on a nature walk to collect various specimens. If they can't collect them, have them take pictures using their smartphone or other device. If you're in the classroom, you can also use jars of class specimen, you can use the textbook, you can use internet images for observation when other options are in short supply. If you're in a distance learning environment, be sure to have students submit a picture of their specimen for your approval and final comparison for the end of this activity. Once students have determined what their specimen will be, they should examine it closely. Tell students they have a limited amount of time, we gave about 15 minutes, to observe their specimen and carefully and thoroughly describe their specimen on a piece of paper. Students should use descriptive words that involve color, shape, size, texture, number of appendages, number of body segments, etc. They should try to describe the specimen to the best of their ability using scientific language in their description. For this activity, students should not write the name of the organism, even if they know it. Once students finish their description, you're going to have them submit their work to you and then return the specimen to the front of the classroom. Again, if you're at home, make sure students send you a pic of the original organism that they chose. If you're in the classroom, you're going to redistribute the descriptions to random students throughout the room. And if this is an at-home activity, you can have students submit their work to you via email, so you can redistribute it to a random student, or you could have students pair up prior to completing this lesson, and then they can just trade their information once they're done. Again, you want to make sure that they don't share what the name of the specimen is, like, hey, check out this butterfly description that I'm sending you. We want it to be a mystery. In the next part, students will read the description they have received, and then they're going to attempt to draw what the first student observed without any cues from the writer other than the description. Since the world is not in black and white, students should use colored pencils or crayons, markers to accurately draw what the description says, showing the texture, the color, number of body segments, again, all the things that are written in the description as described by the previous student. If you're in class, you can have students bring their drawings up to the front of the room to claim the specimen that they think they have drawn and sit back at their desk for a final presentation. For at-home lessons, you can have students submit their drawings to you via email. You can conduct a Zoom meeting and have the students show their work real time. Or you can create an online gallery so students can compare the images received at the beginning of this lesson with their drawings. This is a fun activity that drives home the importance of being detailed in your description and observations of the natural world around you.
Exactly. So once students know how to identify various parts of an organism and can describe in detail what they are seeing, it's time to prep them for the real work of dissection. Prior to every dissection, start with a pre-lab quiz. It helps to know who is prepared to dissect and who isn't, because on dissection day, you don't want to have any kind of mishaps happen with dissection tools such as scalpels and scissors. So after you've gone over your expectations and you've reviewed the general and specific lab practices for the lesson, give a quiz to ensure that your kids know what they are going to be doing once they engage in the actual lab. This is a great tool to use for grouping students and assigning roles in those groups. So you can use this opportunity to ask students questions about anatomical directions, organism classification, methods for observing, organism and dissection specific questions, and even lab safety protocol. That's a great way to remind students of lab safety. Those students that score the highest on this quiz can serve as your peer leaders, while those who didn't quite make the mark can be provided support where necessary. And if you're doing this from home, an easy way to implement this part is to create a Google form and identify it as a quiz in the settings. Once you do this, you can add in the answers and students can receive feedback on their responses real time or at a later time, depending on your preference. In a blended environment, this tool can still be used to create peer-guided groups, even if the quiz is given at home and the lab happens in the class.
All right. One of the biggest difficulties in preparing students for the lab is the lab report. Experimental reports are a bit more difficult to prepare than dissection reports, but the concept is relatively the same and equally as important when it comes to communicating scientific observations. We like to have students identify the specimen name, the purpose for completing the lab, any necessary tools that they'll use during the lab, and a bit of background about the specimen, identifying key structures that they may need to explore. We also have students give a brief description of the steps that they're going to take to dissect the organism, often describing why they'll need to cut that way. For example, you want to lift up as you cut through the abdomen in order to not cut any important structures that might lie below there. Later on, as they complete the dissection, students can compare and contrast structures from prior dissections, and they can draw what they see during their dissection or during their exploration, taking note and drawing in detail internal and external structures. If you're completing this in class, you can have students use the template that we've provided in your toolkit, and they can use that for this step. Our version is made for interactive notebooks, and it should be printed front to back so that it fits neatly in a composition notebook. If you're doing this at home, you can try uploading our dissection template to your Google Classroom, and you can use one of the Google Classroom integrated apps like DocHub to also add text boxes to PDF documents, and that would work great with this application as well.
So when we were in the classroom, we would spend the day before the lab going through everything using a visual presentation. Providing that visual presentation is really the perfect way to address the needs of your various auditory and visual learners, and to also help those struggling students that need a little more support. So you can provide instructions here, as well as provide instructions on the handout that your students receive when they're in class or at home. And during your presentation, students can populate their dissection lab template with all the necessary information, things like safety information, dissection instructions, what specimen it is that they're going to be dissecting, or any other notes that they feel like they should jot down. So if this already wasn't taken care of in your in-class lecture prior to this presentation. So here is where you're going to review lab safety again by addressing the more detailed instructions related to this particular dissection that you're going to be doing, such as no open-toed shoes, making sure that long hair is pulled back in a ponytail, or more serious instructions such as only one pair of hands in the dissection tray at a time, keeping goggles on your face at all times, and in 2020 going forward here, maybe even making sure that they have masks on their face at all times as well. So here you'll discuss the tools needed for the lab and proper use of those tools, as well as you may want to demonstrate the use of those tools and as well in the front of the room, how to hold them, various techniques, etc. Maybe even doing so with a real specimen, which can be very useful to see it being used real time and truly being used in that fashion. Now, if you're not in the classroom for this part, you can make this learning opportunity available by providing your slides or your demonstration dissection via live or a pre-recorded Zoom call in your Google Classroom or as a post on your class blog. But if none of these options work well for you, you can always scour the internet for the wealth of resources that are out there to provide pre-dissection instructions for your students prior to the day of dissection.
All right, the day is here. The kids are excited. It's time to dissect. In pre-pandemic times, dissection was usually done in groups with one specimen to a gaggle of 2 to 4 kiddos. We understand that with the real possibility of social distancing measures taking place in the classroom, specimen may have to be one student to one specimen, leaving teaching budgets high and dry and peer-led collaborative dissections in the dust. We've thought about how to address this issue, and we've decided that our best practice actually works really well for the advent of this new policy as well. So here's what we're going to say. Pre-cut and reuse specimen from class to class, and even day to day. We know it limits the full dissection experience, but truthfully, kids in upper elementary, middle school, and high school, they don't really need to know how to properly make incisions. In fact, there has been a, there has been a big push in the science education community to only have students who are on a pre-med or pre-vet track involved in dissection practices. So that being said, pre-cutting your specimen in the morning and reusing your specimen from period to period will allow you to use fewer specimen and ultimately save on those tight educator and department budgets. Using this method, you can order a class set of specimen plus or minus a few for errors and additional exploration. The morning of dissection day 1, you're going to pre-cut any external features needed for viewing. Reuse them for each class period since no organs are damaged or removed, and you're going to cover them with a moist paper towel after each class to preserve the integrity of the specimen, and then you'll bag them up overnight in a Ziploc or another different plastic bag. On day 2, you're going to make your internal incisions and open and pin your specimen so they're ready for viewing and exploring. Again, after each class period, you're going to cover them with a damp paper towel for use by the next class. Specialty items like stomach contents or other cool observations can be set aside in a special area in a separate tray for all students to explore and view at their leisure. Once you're done with the exploration part, you can save the specimen in your plastic bag again for a lab practical in a day or 2, or you can take photos that you can create a written or online assessment for post-dissection. Be sure to dispose of your specimen properly and ethically. They don't go in the trash. If you're unsure of how to dispose of them, please reach out to your supplier to ask what the best next steps are.
All right. And so if you're going to be doing dissection at home, this is where things get a little bit tricky. There have been discussions in some Facebook groups about actually sending students home with specimen. And honestly, we do not recommend doing so because of biohazard issues, disposal issues, and just general safety concerns. You don't know what a student's home entails and whether it's safe for them in particular to be doing dissection. So we really don't recommend doing dissection at home. However, there are tons and tons of virtual options out there. Things that have been around since I first started teaching, which would be now 17 years ago. Things like frogguts.com is a great resource, Curiscope. There are lots of phone and tablet apps for dissection, and Carolina Biological and Flynn Scientific's virtual dissections that they have online. And just to give a little bump to Flynn, we are giving away a year-long subscription to Flynn's online dissection program to one lucky winner during this conference. So do stay tuned. You may be the lucky winner. We did consider creating a PDF of all these amazing online options that we've curated over the years, but we found an incredibly comprehensive list of various virtual options on this bit.ly link. So if you do the bit.ly, the Science Bank, this is offered by our partners at Animal Learn, and it's called the Science Bank. They offer loaner models for classrooms. So you submit your order online, and then they actually ship these loaner models to your class that you can use them, and then you ship it back when you're done, and it's absolutely free. However, right now, due to COVID, they are not offering this loaner model option. But with that bit.ly link, they have tons of websites that you can visit. So they have online resources, they have lists of books, DVDs, their models, posters, and more. And what's neat is that it's all organized by animal type, education level, subject area, etc. And it's just super comprehensive. Any animal, any anatomical structure for the online sites. It's amazing. If you're looking for a more hands-on, screen-free, and authentic experience that your students can create and manipulate at home, this is where you may want to try one of our paper dissection models that Mel is going to talk about now.
So our models were initially made as a pre-dissection tool for our own students. They are a digital download, and they include a guiding PowerPoint that guides you through the entire process from start to finish of teaching about them. They include a student-friendly reading that discusses the structure and function of all the organs within the organism, as well as a black line and a color template for creating the model. It comes with a graphic organizer where the students put all their information, and they include extension questions that sum up the lesson. We've created 17 different models. We're not done yet, and they're pretty darn authentic. Right down to the incisions in the model and the way that you open up the models and the layering of the organs. Everything is researched extensively before we create them. We also create all of our models using the same colors. So you'll notice that the digestive system in our frog here is the same color as the digestive system in the worm, is the same color as the digestive system in the cat and the gull and the pigeon. So they're great for a comparative anatomy experience. They're inexpensive, and they're perfect for distance learning applications when virtual options are too expensive or they don't provide the hands-on experience that you're looking for. Our models do take up materials like paper products, but they don't contain the nasty chemicals that you would find in a real specimen. And they can easily be disseminated to your students via whatever online platform that you're using, where real specimen cannot. We just ask that you make sure that they're protected from the public at large, since that would be in violation of our terms of use. They also don't contribute to the issue of inhumanely raising and killing specimen for dissection either. If you're on the fence about how awesome they are, you can check out the free model that we have given you in your toolbox or your toolkit. It's our old version of our eye dissection model. The new one has been revamped to offer a handheld option, and it also includes the option of making a human eye or a cow eye So if you like that one and you want to check out the newer version, you'll have to purchase a license for that. Speaking of, if you're not aware of how our licensing works, with every purchase, you get lifetime updates to the model that you can use with your students as long as you teach. However, you can't share it with your colleagues. We just ask that you send them to us for their own license, and we appreciate your collaboration in keeping Getting Nerdy going strong. We're pretty proud of them if you couldn't tell.
Right. All right. So during dissection, notebooks and textbooks can get incredibly messy during your exploration days. So by providing an in-dissection checklist, it gives a visual reminder of what students should be looking for and seeing. But it also keeps harmful chemicals and otherwise gross remnants of specimen off of important papers. You can give an oral quiz to each group or to each student at the end of their exploration. Just keep it really simple. If you're doing group dissections, allow every student a chance to locate or identify an organ, tell you what organ system it belongs to or what its function may be. And then if a student is stumped, allow another student from the group a chance to help them out. And it does boost their morale when they get that little bit of help. And it shows that everyone's kind of part of a team.
Phone a friend.
What'd you say?
Phone a friend.
Yeah, phone a friend, exactly. So if you're working within social distance guidelines, try having a student walk you through their process, provide them with pre-labeled pins specific to each group that they must insert into specific structures for a quick visual cue of understanding. And you can come around and quiz them on the functions of those structures as well. You could also have students use their own phone after degloving and washing their hands. They can record themselves going over the structures and functions of each organ before submitting via email. And the standard lab practical works here too for a hardcore final assessment. You can even have students record themselves going over their dissection model, their paper model, and discussing all of those organs and where they're located because they're not actually labeled on the model itself. They would learn that through doing the reading and assembly. If this is an at-home project, you can provide multiple options for assessment. If dissection is done in class, but assessment is not, you could create a Google form with images from the dissection and multiple choice questions. Or you can create a Google Slides presentation where students must drag and drop labels from the side over images on the slide for identification, or use lines to trace the path of blood through the heart. There's just tons of various options for doing that. Another option could be to provide students with images of the dissection itself that you personally take, or have them gather images from the internet to create their own dissection guide. They can label structures, identify functions, and other pertinent information. And students can then submit their work to you in various formats, such as a PowerPoint presentation, a PDF, a movie, etc., depending on your preference. Well, that concludes our session on navigating dissection in 2020. We hope we've given you some valuable tips to help you start to continue using dissection in your classroom in these uncertain times. A few reminders before we go. Please remember to head over to your toolkit if you haven't already to access all of the freebies that we've given you. And remember that you can access this session as well as your toolkit through September 2020. We want to say a quick thank you again to the Science Squad and Champions for Science for including us in this amazing virtual conference, and to all of you who attended our session. We know this year is going to be different, and we're so thankful for educators like you who are working tirelessly and very hard over the summer to learn how to continue teaching and learning in this new uncharted territory. Please stick around for the live Q&A that's immediately following this session. You may have tons of questions. We may not have addressed everything that you need during our session, so we are here to answer those questions. And also, you are going to be able to enter to win one of our paper dissection models as well during our live Q&A. So we hope to see you there. Thank you guys. Bye.
Thanks. Bye.
It's getting nerdy.